Okay, this is a setup that we would use outside, the exterior, the backyard sump pump. And we've got a solid lid cover on the top. The secret here, the notice, is that we bring the pipe out underground. And so we've got the discharge, is everything's underground, but it all sets up the same way. We've got the Zoller M98, sets up starting with a male threaded 1.5" adapter. We've got a riser coming up, 3/16" hole, the check valve, arrows pointing upwards, and then it comes up and it turns and it goes out the side of the pit. The inlet line can be anywhere you want. These are preset, so we could just cut the nipple off and bring a pipe in, or we could drill into the side of the pit. It doesn't really matter. But we're bringing water in, it comes down to the bottom of the basin. The pump will lift it up and send it wherever we want. Remember, this is an outdoor sump basin and how you set it up. Okay, the outside sump basin, the exterior pump. This is something that you're setting in the backyard, or maybe it's on the outside, the exterior of a home or a building. And I've just kind of cut this away so we can look inside of here and see. M98 sets up exactly the same way. I've showed you this 1,000 times. Start with a male threaded 1.5" adapter. Then you have a small piece of PVC. We call this a riser. It's 1.5". It comes up. We have a pressure relief valve. We need to drill a little 3/16" hole. That helps the pump in case it becomes airlocked. Lets the air come out. Then we've got the check valve. Notice that this is arrows pointing upwards. Whatever check valve you use, there's going to be some type of marking that shows you the direction of flow. I like to use the Legend. It does have a stainless steel flapper rather than a rubber one, so it lasts a lot longer. This is held together with stainless steel no hub bands. Goes from 1.5" to 1.25" because the check valve is 1.25", and then we come back again with 1.25" to 1.5", and you can see we're discharging it underground. This line's coming out underground. It's not coming up through the top. Although you can see there are knockouts for if you wanted to put it in a crawl space or a basement, you could bring that straight on up. You could also use one of these for your electric to bring the power out. Real simple, made by ADS, available everywhere. This is not a special basin by any means. They work great. Standard sump basins are available. I find them at Lowe's. Hard to find at the Home Depot or Ace, but Lowe's usually carries these basins, so really great. Okay, let's look at a battery backup system. In other words, when that power goes out, there is a small 12-volt pump that can help dewater that basement or crawl space. Would not recommend this for the backyard. There is way too much water that comes into the backyard for these little battery backup pumps to do any good at all. But let's take a look. So your main pump sets up pretty much the same way. We've got a pressure relief valve that's down here, and we have the check valve that comes up. It goes out. We're discharging, right out through the side. Remember, that's all underground for the backyard sump pump. The battery backup is 12-volt system, so this wire goes to a battery, and of course that battery has to remain charged. You could actually also get an alarm float to put on here, so that as that water level rises up higher, this pump has failed or the power's out, and the float will kick on and it will actually send off an alarm to tell you that the power's off, that the pump's not working. But the battery backup works really good for the basement, possibly the crawl space. But for the basement, this battery backup pump for a dewatering system to help keep the flood from occurring in the basement, these battery backup pumps work really good. Being down here in Florida, power goes out quite frequently during hurricanes. A lot of people ask, can we get a battery backup? And yes, we can, but the amount of water that comes in from the backyard, whether it's a hurricane or just a regular rain, is so much more than down in the basement. But this is how it would set up if you're in the backyard. You've got the battery backup pump, check valve comes up, it tees into the main line. We still have the main check valve, and of course it goes out. We're still underground. All of this is underground. You've got your lid, But all of this stays underground because we don't want this discharge to show anything. We don't want anything. All you're going to see is the lid. That's it. Basement dewatering systems. You can see it. This is a battery backup system. We've got a main pump, which is a 1/2 horsepower Zoller M98, and then we've got a small, teeny tiny little battery backup. In the basement, that dewatering pump works so good. It works so good. Everything sets up the same way as you would set it up outside, as I've shown you many, many times for the exterior, for the backyard sump pump. The big difference, the really big difference is that the check valve is now above ground because it's easier to work on. From the top of that check valve, it would continue and go on up until it either comes out above ground, or you could go through the block and send it through the block underground. These little backup pumps for the basement, they work great. I think that pump pushes about 14 gallons, maybe 12 gallons per minute. That's a lot of water for the basement. Remember, not that much water actually comes down into the basement that quickly. So that little pump could keep up. But during the big events, you really need that big 1/2 horsepower or 1/3 of a horsepower to move that basement water. So the basement sump basin and pump sets up just a little bit differently. Everything's the same down here. We still have a check valve on this pump, on the battery backup pump, but on the main pump, that check valve is now above the basement floor because this is easier to get to, easier to work on. Remember, this line would come up, keep going up until it comes out above ground in your basement. It can go through the band plate, or it could just go through the block, depending on how you want that, underground or above ground. The lid for the basement is also a little different. You can screw this down. You see the holes that could be screwed down into the basin, make it super tight. And the reason that you would do that is because of radon gas, and that's what the extra hole is for. So you could actually put another pump down in here, and that will pump the radon gas that's under your floor up and out through the basement wall. We've got the hole for the discharge, 1.5-inch pipe. Remember, the check valve is now above ground, and we also have a hole for the wires. And these also come with grommets so that you can make this very, very tight and airtight if you needed to. A quick note, this lid is available at Lowe's. It does not come with the basin, but this lid's available. You can see the knockouts describing the same thing. We've got a place for different places for that discharge to come out of this basin, and these are called knockouts. You could hit this hard with a hammer. I've done that. They do pop off, but it's much better to use a hole saw of whatever size. This one, you just take your hacksaw and cut it out, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. The basement or crawl space dewatering system really is pretty simple. You've got the basic sump pump that sits inside the basin. You've got the riser coming up. In the basement, remember, we can put that check valve above ground, above the cement floor. There's lots of lids available. This is a slit lid, and it makes it very simple for you to set this pump up because usually the pump is offset where the discharge comes up. So you can easily slide this through. You can see it's got a slot. See how you can open it up right there? Makes it really simple to put this down in, and you can secure it with screws. Real nice. This dewatering system is so simple and it works so good, but the real secret is to have a good pump down here. This is a 1/2 horsepower. A good 1/3 of a horsepower works great. Simple setup and design. In the crawl space, this pump and setup works really good. We've got a 1/2 horsepower pump, and you can see here's the footer pipe coming into the sump basin. So this is surrounded with gravel, we already know that, and it's picking up the subsurface water that comes up in the crawl space. Fills up that pipe, runs over, drops down into the basin, and the pump lifts it up and sends it out. We're going to put a check valve. We can put it above ground and send it up and out through the wall, or we could put the check valve down here and keep it inside the pit. Much more secure, a little bit harder to get to, but works really good. The same setup for the sump basin inside of the crawl space. I like to put my check valve down inside of the basin because I think it's safer down there, but you know, in the crawl space it's still lifting up, and then it's going to come up and you're going to turn and go through that wall, so the check valve could be up higher, and above the grade. So you could do it that way as well. So there's 3 different ways to set up that sump basin and the proper way to install them as well. Okay, this is not the pump to use for a backyard watering system. 1/4 horsepower with that little 3/4 inch garden hose discharge, it does not work. It will not keep up. And if you look at the bottom of this, not enough water can even possibly get into this pump for it to work. Do not set this pump up and use this for your backyard lift station. Your backyard sump pump needs to be a 1/2 horsepower minimum in order for it to actually lift this water up and send it to the street or to the storm or to a swale. Wherever you're sending it, it needs to be a much larger pump. Hey, this is Chuck with Apple Drains, reminding you that if you believe you can do something, I guarantee you can do it. Have a great day.